We also make sure Sean can hear. Sean, can you hear us loud and clear? Beautiful. With that being said, I call to order the Wednesday, December 13th, 2023 regular school committee meeting. I ask you all to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I ask now that we lower our heads, open our hearts for a moment of reflection. Thank you. All right, item 2, consent agenda. I will ask for a motion to approve items 2.1 to 2.5.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We will vote via roll call.
Just a reminder, Chair, I wasn't here, so I won't vote on
The meeting minutes, understood. We'll wait for Jennifer, thank you. No problem, take your time, it's all good. And we'll vote via roll, Jennifer.
Audie?
Aye.
Hannah Ayotte?
Aye.
Susan Kinane?
Aye.
Mike Rocha?
Aye. Beautiful. In terms of public input, we do have Ms. Lindsay Pinio, who will be speaking to an agenda item. When we get to that agenda item during the discussion, I will empower you to speak to the room, okay? Beautiful. Moving on to item 4.1, Spotlight and Excellence. I believe this is Mr. Principal McKinnon.
Thank you, Chairperson Audi. Things John have up on here. But we recognize our students of the month for the month of November. The IB theme for that month was Inquire. As you can see, students who are inquirers nurture their curiosity, developing skills for inquiry and research. They know how to learn independently with others. And those are our winners for grades K through 8. We also had some of our specials represented here, library, physical education, and the arts as well. Last night, next slide. Last night, we had our holiday arts exposition that took place here in the school. Very well attended. Again, having to pull out more seats right at the start to accommodate some of the people who showed up. But the students, particularly one group that to me really stood out was our 5th grade band. Their first time. I mean, I know they played a little last year as 4th graders, but they truly knocked it out of the park from what I saw and heard, and did a truly outstanding job. Kids really enjoyed it. Mr. Russo and Miss Oriole again did a knockout job with this, and they should be proud of how the students performed. And finally, some of our upcoming events. The next slide, John. First of all, winter athletics has started December 5th. Although we don't have any games scheduled before the holiday, they do have something during the holiday at the University of Rhode Island. They'll be playing at halftime of the women's basketball game versus Harvard University on December 28th. It's a scrimmage. It's not really a game. Our Sakana PTO is currently holding their holiday shops here in the Commons area where kids can go down and buy gifts for their family members. Our 6th and 7th graders will be attending a Bodies in Motion. It's at the Boston Museum of Science this coming Tuesday, December 19th. They'll be traveling up there early in the morning and getting back, I think, before the buses flee. Our first tech, Miss Brazil and Mr. Gay, are running our first tech robotics program. They have been going pretty much since the start of the year, 2 days a week, 2 hours a day. They recently competed in kind of a scrimmage atmosphere at North Kingstown High School. They are one of 2 middle school teams that compete there. And from what Miss Brazil and what the kids were talking about, they truly hit it out of the park. Again, just a scrimmage. Their competition comes up January 27th at New England Institute of Technology. So hopefully they're ready to roll. The New Bedford Symphony Orchestra is here on January 17th to work with our third and fourth graders on motion and music. Last year they did work with us on some geometry and music and how they interact with each other. Eighth graders, science and engineering fair. Our eighth graders have been working all fall and currently I think have turned in their papers, their research papers for their science and engineering fair that is going to be taking place for the public viewing on January 17th. Our Scripps Spelling Bee will be taking place here on February 8th. Last year, we got back into it after a 1 or 2 year hiatus based on COVID. We had a top finisher finish 6th in the state last year. So that was a good showing. And finally, also to be recognized, our drama program, Miss Oriole, Mr. Russo, and Miss Segala have been prepping our upwards of 35 students for Mermaid that is going to be taking place on April 3rd and 5th. And they have been training and practicing pretty much all fall, probably 3 days a week. She works with different groups at a time, but in preparation for the production on April 3rd through the 5th. So if you have an opportunity, I know it's a couple months away, it's worth going to watch. And that is what's going on in the school right now.
Thank you, Principal McKenna. I appreciate that. Item 5, spotlight and superintendent report. My apologies.
I'm just going to highlight a couple of sort of overarching wellness activities on the district level. The first is participating once again, our administration, in the Rhode Island Food Policy Council's legislative roundtable coming up. And that is focused on healthy school meals for all, universal free school meals for all Rhode Island's public school students. I was an opening panelist last year, and the initiative did not gain a lot of traction, and it has since gained a lot of traction for universal free meals for all kids in the state. Last year, just a handful of states enacted policies and legislation to pick up the tab for every child in every public school. Those states, it went from 2 to 4 to 7, and now there are 9: California, Colorado, Maine, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Mexico, and Vermont. I live in Massachusetts. And what Massachusetts did was it taxed the state's wealthiest residents 4%, and that is funding free lunches and breakfast for all kids in Massachusetts. So there are many different ways to fund it. That is how my state funded it, and that was in place this year. Some of you may remember our kids had free lunches throughout the country, every district, during COVID, and that really helped families. We all have sticker shock when we go to the grocery store lately. And so this would definitely be definitely equitable. At this point in the state, 64% of school lunch meals are already free to those who qualify. And so this isn't the heaviest lift ever. The Senate and the House have already expressed the likelihood of passing legislation this year, and the Food Policy Council will focus on getting it into the governor's budget. So that is definitely a wellness initiative that all of our children and families will benefit from. We have a pretty unique wellness initiative right now regarding our staff. The school is committed to student wellness and the wellness of all those who serve them every day. We've all heard about how stressful it is to be a public educator or specialist. In this 21st century, life is more complex, and so are the jobs. And so my administration has teamed up with the Newport County Prevention Coalition. We wrote a grant. We did seek out funding from various funding sources, and Van Buren Charitable Foundation, after doing some intensive vetting, did fund our educator peer support through Reflection Circles model. It's the first of its kind in the country. It's available to all certified staff members here, and it's in response to the teacher shortage, the burnout rate of teachers. In various polls, teachers have come out on top in terms of job dissatisfaction. And if we lose teachers in schools any more than we already have these past few years since the pandemic, will be in dire straits. And so this is a critical issue. So we are basically piloting this. And if it's a success, it has the chance of being expanded within the East Bay through the Van Buren Charitable Foundation. And what it allows for baked into the school day are peer support circles, reflection circles. On site, we have 2 trained facilitators. We have one sitting here. This model is affiliated with the Wharton School of Business at Penn. And it is so extraordinary that there's nothing to compare it to. It is definitely designed for Fortune 500 company executives. And we begged them to consider allowing us to be trained and deliver it in the K-12 space. They weren't, absolutely bowled over, but I think we won them over, and they flew in this summer, and the training occurred at Roger Williams University. And so we don't want to talk about it too much because it is peer-to-peer, and administration has nothing to do with it except paying the bills and the invoices and continuing to write the grants. Something I found through research, and I felt, my goodness, if executives can have access to sophisticated support systems like this, why can't public school educators? And so that is definitely airborne, and by all accounts, it's thriving, and I couldn't be happier regarding the implementation. I want to publicly thank Mary Elizabeth Miller and Cara DiGiulio, the 2 trained facilitators who meet every other week with 4 separate groups of certified teachers during the school day and implement this model. It incorporates an online component as well as AI, the best of AI. So there's a lot of content, professional development content around managing change, managing challenges. And so teachers have access to the online component, the AI component, and their trained facilitators. So hopefully there's an article in this somewhere when it's done, and we share it with the community. But it's either the most brilliant idea that has come out of Wilbur McMahon or not. So we just want to tell the public how committed we are, not only to children, but to the adults who serve them. And so that's why it's highlighted tonight. We highlighted it last year when we got word of the grant being awarded to us. And but now it has been airborne since October, end of October, Mary Elizabeth?
Yes,
Yeah.
we started it.
Yeah. And so it's new, and we'll have more information at the end of the year. Each participant did a survey, if you will, gather some data, and then there'll be a post, and that'll be, and also our educators are informing those who designed, and it's a proprietary framework, who designed it. They're informing them in terms of how to tweak it, how to modify it for the K-12 space. And so it's been a really good experience. So thank you for that. And that's it. Student wellness, hopefully free lunches for all next September, and free breakfasts, and staff wellness. The educator peer support through reflection circles model in the East Bay. Any?
Thank you, Superintendent. Thank you, Mary Elizabeth. Appreciate that.
She's pretty terrific.
Beautiful. I mean, they talk about the Postal Service, but Mr. John McNamee has joined us tonight over the river, through the woods, over that bridge. That's unpassable in some directions, but you are here. We really appreciate that. And now I'll turn it over to you for your finance report.
Make a point that Sean is not here. He's
I have not heard the end of
I
it.
extended the kindness to both of you, just so you know.
Makes me look bad, John.
So the 6/30/23 audit has been completed. Their field work has been completed. I believe that they're waiting for some external reports. I believe it might be on the post-retirement employee benefits liability. We have a conference call with the Auditor General next week. Auditor General has made an effort to try to promote districts to get their reports on a timely basis. The reports are due at the end of December, but there are a number of communities that are on extension. The Auditor General required all the extensions to be in 45 days before year end so that they could track them and kind of see how they're moving forward. I believe last year there was more than 50% of the districts didn't meet the deadline. So he was kind of consciously looking at that. I believe that Little Compton has an extension through the end of January, which shouldn't be a problem to meet that deadline. So the numbers that you do have in here for 6/30/23 are still unaudited at this point. Looking at 24 on the revenue side, just to follow up with last month's discussion, we do have an increase in tuition revenue from out-of-district students. So that's going to yield some additional tuition revenue of about $61,500. Last week, the superintendent and I met with the board of the Newport County Regional. And based on the preliminary numbers that we saw for liquidation purposes, there should be sufficient cash to allow us to meet the projection of $100,000 that we had in for revenue for FY24. So it was a good meeting. I was pleased to see that there was a fair amount of cash over there. So we may even exceed that, but at this point in time, it looks like we could at least meet that $100,000 estimate. On the expense side, everything is pretty much going along towards budget, with the exception of the out-of-district tuition, which we talked about last month. We do have a little bit of an excess there of about $45,000, and that's the result of the CTE tuition being a little bit, number of students are above what we had budgeted. One item which deals with the electricity for FY24, we had anticipated that the virtual net metering agreement would be in place as of the end of December. The contract said that they were trying to shoot for June of 23, but no later than 12/31/23. But apparently they're not going to meet that. I think the holdup is on the Rhode Island Energy side in terms of the infrastructure that they need to bring to bear. So I think they're looking right now at March 31, when we'll hopefully start to see some of the benefits of that virtual net metering. Seems to be, even with a lot of the solar installations, that infrastructure piece with Rhode Island Energy seems to be the holdup on a lot of these projects. So,
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. McNamee. Item 7, Sean, can I just speak to this, or do you want to speak to it? Ultimately, the subcommittee for the non-union negotiation consisted of myself and Ms. Hannah Ayotte. Hannah identified herself as possibly having a conflict of interest, as her brother has been now named or is now a member of the non-teachers union. And she has removed herself from that subcommittee. Through my discretion, as I did last year when appointed chair by this body, I then distributed subcommittees and appointees to those positions, and I will be naming Megan Gonzalez in Hannah's absence for the negotiation subcommittee of the non-union employees. Does that meet criteria, Sean?
Yeah, I would just clarify it's of the support personnel.
Support person.
They are union.
Yeah, sorry, the non-teachers. Okay, yes. Support person.
Non-certified.
Non-certified, yeah, that's the term you're looking for.
Sure, Michael. Go ahead.
So how about when we get to certified, Sean, what happens then? We're gonna,
Well, there would be, at that point, there would be a new subcommittee constituted, and the chair would appoint under the bylaws members of that subcommittee, like all other subcommittees that create under, or that are created under the auspices of the school committee.
Good, Michael.
like, I just, yeah, I mean, I'm asking because is there a conflict with that? Because,
No, there is not a conflict with
My
Megan.
sister?
yeah,
She is
Yeah,
not in
she's not an employee. It's a consultant role for the International Baccalaureate.
And then moreover, just to be clear with not only the committee, but also the public, the subcommittee is not the final decision maker. The decision will be made by this committee. The subcommittee will present to this committee. And then from there, this body will make a decision on how we move forward with the contract. So just to be clear with that. Moving on. Committee reports. Policy Subcommittee, Ms. Hannah Ayotte.
Thank you. The policy subcommittee has plans to meet after the new year. So look out for the next agenda. And then we can speak to the changes of the policy we'll be voting on shortly.
Excellent. Portsmouth School Committee Liaison Report, that is me. As I said, they did have a robust meeting last night. A couple things to champion here from our high school students. Girls soccer was the only fall athletic program that won the state championship. They won the D2 soccer state championship. They will be moving up to D1 next year. The school play was Amadeus. I'm not uberly familiar with that, but I'm told that it's incredibly difficult for high school students to make that happen. And the reviews were fantastic from people in the crowd, people that attended the event. So hats off to everyone that participated at the high school level. The blood drive, I know I had mentioned this in the past. They had 24 donors for their November drive, and that constitutes to saving 84 lives. The Student Council also does an annual Thanksgiving baskets. I believe this is the third year they've done it. They did 4 baskets this year. It comprises of an entire Thanksgiving dinner and also warm pies. They distributed those to 4 families. Holiday wrapping. So one of the high school students has taken on wrapping holiday gifts, and in exchange for a donation for the Hearts for Henry. I apologize that I'm not very thorough on this organization. That said, they do mention it multiple. I will be mentioning it again. So in exchange for wrapping your gifts, you make a small donation and they pass that along to the Hearts for Henry. They do for new students or freshman students or anyone trying to get involved, there is a Patriot Party that meets once a month. It's a meet and greet for new students. It's a gathering for people to outreach and find their kind of way, their group, their niche, whatever interests them. That's had some success. For the month of December, all students and faculty can wear flannels on Friday. It is in correspondence with the Hearts for Henry. So if you do see somebody wearing flannel, they are also contributing to the Hearts for Henry charity. The holiday concert, there was one last week, but the symphonic band and the chorus will be tomorrow night. The spring musical is in the works. I think that they had said that there was a hiatus, but that should be returning. Last Friday, the Portsmouth High School hosted a STEM fair. And they said it was a huge success. I guess people from all around the state came. I wasn't sure if we had a participant there, but the students had raved about it. And winter sports are starting. So that's kind of what's on the docket right now for Portsmouth High School students. I know that they are discussing some of last night's meeting included some of the potential changes as RIDE has, let me just give one example. So for example, our students that are in there now only need 3 years of math. Next year's incoming freshman class will be required to have that 4th year of math. And this is a governance by the Department of Education. And it's those kind of things that will be implemented at the high school level. If you do have a high school student, certainly stay tuned as that information will be distributed to you. Okay, that is enough. That is all for the Portsmouth High School report. Wellness Subcommittee report, Ms. Sue Kinane.
We met at the end of November. Roy already talked about wellness with the students and the staff and the programs they have going on. They did get a grant for a range in the cafeteria. The kids had their harvest meal, and they loved it. And the only other thing that was big on there was the wellness policy, and Jeannie Dunn wanted that looked at again because of the language about prohibiting it says serving sweets, cupcakes, ice cream in class birthday parties prohibited. So it was just an issue with the word prohibited. So we talked about that. And that's going to go back to the policy committee. And Jack and Lloyd were going to talk to the policy committee about it.
We will introduce that change, and I think everyone endorsed it. That was there.
Thank you, Sue.
That's that.
Town Recreation Committee Liaison Report, Mr. Michael Rocha.
So the town rec committee met in, there's not going to be a meeting in December, but we are awaiting a engineer's report on the tennis court at the lower level on the suitability of what will or what will not work there. They're actually doing soil tests to basically come up with a plan that will be presented to the rec committee, and then from there, a recommendation will go back to the town council. So we're anticipating that report will come in mid to end of January, and we are going to maintain having the rec committee meetings on the 4th Monday during the course of 2024. If anybody wants to meet, right now we're meeting at the old police station, but we anticipate on going back to town council chambers after the new year. So.
Thank you, Michael. All right, Contract Negotiation Subcommittee report. We had met. We discussed Hannah stepping down, Megan stepping in. There was no correspondence with the union per se. We just literally met to kind of lay out the groundwork in terms of how we will proceed. Like I said, when I appointed Megan tonight, anything that happens in this room, that room will be brought to before this committee to vote upon. Moving on, I will go to the action items. Mrs. Pinio, I am going to tag you in when item 10.2 comes, but we are at 10.1 right now. And I will consider a motion to approve the 2024 Little Compton School Committee schedule of meetings. We will vote via roll call.
We're not gonna, you're gonna keep these dates?
No one had reached out to Jennifer, so in the effort of keeping it consistent with the public, if we do have an issue where multiple members can't be here, we will make a pivot and we can change the date of the meeting. But in an effort to be uniform and make that out to the public, we're going to keep it with Wednesdays. Is the second Wednesday? Second Wednesday of the month throughout the course of the year. So I had a motion, I had a second. We will vote via roll call.
Travis Audi,
Aye.
Hannah Ayotte,
Aye.
Megan Gonzalez, Susan Kinane,
Aye.
Mike Rocha.
Aye.
Excellent, thank you all. And now we have Mrs. Pinio will speak to item 10.2, the suicide prevention policy and protocol. So please.
Yes, I would like to request that the school committee postpone consideration and discussion and vote to approve the suicide prevention and protocol until after the subcommittee meets to do its work. At the previous school committee meeting, the subcommittee was to meet and do some work on that policy. And it has not taken place as of yet. And I would like that to happen because I think the amount of discussion that needs to go on would far exceed the forum of this full meeting.
Understood. Thank you for your comment. We will log it for the record. And did you want to speak to a specific part of the policy? Because we're only making an amendment to a small portion of it.
Well, there are other pieces that need to be considered. There are repetitions and there are sequence issues that are convoluted and I think require just some consideration to work out the policy so that if any individual were put in charge of needing to follow that policy, they could pick it up and they could follow it in a step-by-step and sequential manner. And I don't see that as appearing there. And there is another piece that was to be discussed about, I know Ms. Diaz and I agreed Ms. Diaz-Mitchell and I agreed to disagree at the last meeting that a clinician may determine whether or not to inform a parent that they should seek mental health consultation for their child if the child had expressed suicidal ideation and of course had expressed or attempted to take an action. And I do believe that best practice in the medical community and in the mental health community is to review, not for a clinician to be put in the awkward position and vulnerable position of needing to consider the likelihood that a child's expression of intent would actually go forward. Rather, a clinician's position should be, by best practice, to consider the costs versus the benefits of deciding to take an action. That is, in this case, to tell a parent or indicate to a parent that their child should be seen by a mental health professional. I can only think of costs to not telling a parent that. If that child were to go forward with continuing with ideation and then took that to an action, and the parent were not at least informed by the clinician who's meeting with the parent that that should take place. Imagine the horror of the parent feeling that they were never advised. However, to advise, on the other hand, changes everything in that the parent of that child understands that they should seek out mental health consultation. And then it is taken out of the arena of the school clinician and placed in the proper arena of the mental health arena. And I think that it's very important that be worded in that manner so that the clinician, unless of course there are provisions in there that we already discussed, that if there is worry about harm to the child, if a parent were to react aggressively towards that child, then that's a DCYF issue, and that would be that course of action would be taken in addition to the informing process. The parent deserves the opportunity, and I believe is entitled to the opportunity to know that they should seek further mental health consultation, because any child who makes that kind of a statement about their contemplating suicide, we are not, as clinicians, in the position to know whether that child was doing that just to seek attention or had more serious intent. And furthermore, any child who makes that kind of announcement is in need of seeing a mental health counselor to get to the bottom of the reason, even if it is appeared to be seeking attention. People don't seek attention in that direction unless they are troubled. That's why I would like this to continue.
Thank you. Certainly, thank you for your comment. But tonight you kind of spoke on it. The policy doesn't remove the parent being informed. The only time in which we are discussing is if the child discloses and in the judgment of the clinician is likely to cause harm to the student. So the home body. So the parents are not removed from this process at all. Moreover, I don't believe that our clinician is the judge and jury or the arbiter of whether or not the outcome of how this goes. They're just merely informing as necessary. Similar to if a medical emergency came in, you call 911, and then you would make the subsequent call to inform the parents.
If I may.
Yes, please, Hannah.
I just also would like to say we have been working on this policy since I believe September on the policy subcommittee level. It has been booted back to the subcommittee, I believe, one time. And at this point, our legal counsel, our clinicians have all vetted this policy and believe it does what is needed to protect our students, our clinicians, and all those involved.
If I may, Chair.
Please.
Thank you.
Let's see what we got going here, because we're only Mrs. Pinio, while I hear you loud and clear, we're only making an edit to a small piece of it. And it doesn't remove what you're speaking of, that the parent would still be informed.
The clinician must inform the parents, right, or guardians, right. That is absolutely concrete here. If a student threatens suicide, unless disclosure in the judgment of the clinician is likely to cause harm to the student. So unless there is that rare instance of an exception. Yeah. But I do want to introduce another change. Through this process, and I thank you for bringing this policy under scrutiny. It's a boilerplate policy that many districts adopted, and we are localizing it, and we're taking all stakeholder input. So this is pretty strong language. The clinician must, and unless, that rare exception when disclosure would be harmful to the child. But our clinician approached me about other language, and I did share that with the chair of the subcommittee. And you can massage and tweak policies at this body as well. Our clinician, and I discussed it with our attorney, and it wasn't an easy sell, but he does agree that before the word disclosure, we should have a qualifying phrase, if possible. Disclosure to parents should be made in the presence of a second staff member as witness. And our clinician did point out there are instances where it could be in the evening, on a weekend, during a school vacation, where information comes to her, where a wellness check must be done immediately. And she's at home and she's answering her cell phone or an email. When I was a principal in a middle school, that's a tough age for kiddos. There were several times when there was outreach to me at home on a weekend during vacation, one time on Christmas Eve, that from a parent whose child was a friend of another child, and a wellness check had to be initiated. And I didn't have time to have a witness reaching out and so on and so forth. So I'm asking the committee to also consider another change, and that is, if possible, comma, lowercase d for disclosure to parents should be made in the press. If possible, it's not always possible Mary Elizabeth Miller, would you like to speak to that?
I would second that, what you just shared, Laurie, that there are certainly circumstances where it is not feasible or appropriate to have a second person available. And that's where action must be taken and documented
Right,
appropriately
absolutely.
to ensure that the child is getting what they need.
Right. Contemporaneous notes are taken anyway. And she's so vigilant with contemporaneous notes. And so, or whoever
Any clinician, right?
right, and we have 2 part-time clinicians as well. So, but it's not always possible. Anyone working with kids nowadays knows that 24/7 you are accessible and available. And so but these discussions, Ms. Pinio, have been very fruitful. So that language is pretty strong. The clinician must inform unless there's that rare incident. And also, we need to honor the reality of access that kids have and their families have to our clinicians via email, et cetera. And it's not always during a school day. And it would be impossible for Mary Elizabeth to have a witness on the fly when critical information came to her that a student
Not
might be
appropriate.
engaging in self-harm. Yeah.
In terms of family's confidentiality.
Mrs. Pinio, at my discretion, I will let you speak.
Okay,
This is the final time, though.
this is,
We've got a good grasp of this.
okay, this is not the sentence that I'm referring to. The sentence that I'm referring to, it follows, in such a case, DCYF shall be contacted. It's the sentence following. If, in the opinion of the clinician, the student is assessed to be at risk, the clinician may suggest immediate referral to the family physician or mental health agency. That is the may that I am referring to. You don't see it there?
Yes, I do.
I do.
I do, but I don't see, will. I don't see the objection.
Objection is that if they do not suggest that offer that suggestion to the parent, let's talk about the costs to that. That's what I was referring to. The costs to that for not referring or for not indicating that's necessary to the parent could be horrific. That's the sentence I'm referring to.
I think what that does is it honors the complexities of cases. And without an absolute, like a should or a must or will. And it honors the expertise of our trained clinicians, licensed clinicians by the Department of Health, including one sitting before you and some from other schools that I know are here in the audience. So it honors the realities of contemporary life and the complexities of adolescence and youth when it comes to crises. So I'm reasonably certain, and I've been a practicing educator for 40 years, that in most cases, that is, done. But we cannot have absolute terms in there. And we also have language that might even contravene, if we put should, would, will, might even contravene some of the regulations that our clinicians are licensed to uphold. So would you like to speak to some of that?
Yes, I would.
I'm talking, I was asking Mary Elizabeth, our sitting clinician.
Well, I also will speak to, it's certainly important to have policies,
Right.
but as clinicians, licensed clinicians, we are held to a much higher standard than just a school policy.
Right.
In terms of our Department of Health clinical license, we would answer to that board as well, in following best practices, in terms of any student or family who's in crisis. So our policies are certainly important, and policies like this are required by RIDE. We also have to consider that we are looking at students through a clinical lens and answering bigger picture than just a school policy if we have a student in crisis.
Correct.
So this is certainly not the end all be all from a clinical perspective of how I would handle or any clinician would handle a student in crisis.
Correct. Ultimately, there's no policy that we can implement that would supersede her governance by the boards that you license you and oversee her licensure. So we could make a policy that says, do this, that, and the other thing. But if it doesn't fall in line with the guise of what she's held to, which is a higher standard than our policy, she's going to do what's in the best interest of what she's ethically governed by.
Right.
So regardless of what we come up here with here today, she is still governed by something greater than our policy.
Yes, I understand that.
So that's where it ends.
So now I just ask, what is the benefit then, as we think again about best practice? What is the benefit to a clinician determining not to inform a parent that they should seek mental?
Once again, Ms. Pinio, we are informing the parent. We are informing the parent. It says right at the start, the clinician must inform the parents or guardians if a student threatens suicide.
In that sentence.
So this is the 1%. The first sentence covers 99% of cases. In the one instance that a child comes in and says, I'm having suicidal ideologies. Go ahead, Miss. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Please.
The clinician may suggest, those are two examples to a family physician on mental health. I mean, I've sent kids directly to an emergency room. That's not in the policy, but that was appropriate at the time. So again, I think this is a guiding policy. I don't think this is going to cover every possible circumstance that could present, because I may not suggest either of those things to a family, because I may suggest something that's even more imminent, or put a kid in an ambulance. And so the policy won't speak to every possible situation. I think it covers the broad strokes of making sure parents are informed, TCRF is contacted when appropriate, but that clinical judgment of, in this situation, what I advise the family to do might be different than the next situation. And that's the clinical judgment component.
Go ahead, Michael.
So I'm going to go back on where I understand where it says it must inform, but it also says unless disclosure in the judgment of the clinician. And that to me is open-ended, and I am very family-driven from day one. Whether it is this is likely to cause harm to the student, that's the judgment of the clinician at that particular time.
The expert, correct.
Right. But
that's licensed by the state and governed by the state.
Right.
Supersedes our policy.
But it's also their child. It's also the parent's child. That is a matter of what the subject is at that particular moment.
Correct.
So regardless whether somebody thinks may or may not cause harm, you should always still contact the child's parents.
The parents will be. Yes, please. Hold on. We need to calm down here, because
say that.
I got to tell you, like Mary Elizabeth Miller has shared with us, this is a policy. This does not supersede what she is governed by. This is merely, this is what we would do. And then there's instances, like she said, it doesn't go step by step. She has to make determinations based on her expertise and her evaluating the situation. So, I mean, this idea that it says unless, there's nothing preventing her from reaching out to the parents. There's nothing in here that says we will not reach out to the parents when or if. It's at the discretion of the clinician, and she is the expert which we empower to make these decisions. And she is governed by a higher authority than this body. She is governed by the state of Rhode Island and the licensures which she has attained. So I would go as far to say as our policy doesn't cover enough. But we have an expert in place that can make that determination in the moment for the best outcome for the student and the family. because she is the expert that we have empowered to do so.
So
I may make my comment.
Please,
Sure.
Hannah.
Just to add on to that, I agree wholeheartedly with what you were saying. And this body is governed by our bylaws, which state our responsibility is first and foremost to the students of this district, which I believe that this policy does protect the students of this district. And I will be voting yes.
And I do want to step in just for a moment
Please, Sean.
as legal counsel. Something that was stated is what statement that was made that whether the clinician believes there is harm or not, they should inform the parent. And I can't sit here and advise this committee to adopt a policy where an employee has a good faith belief that they would be causing harm to a student and that they would still have to move forward with causing that harm.
Correct.
So, again, we've been around and around on this. There are some circumstances where we're dealing with safety of students and complex situations where we need to rely on the judgment of the individuals who are, one, licensed, two, know the students, and know the facts on the ground. Is there sometimes mistakes that happen? Yes. With that said, adopting a policy that is going to top down cookie cutter a situation for all kids, regardless of the circumstances, is very likely going to create significant problems. So I've recommended this policy. It puts, as everyone has been stating here, it puts the judgment in the experts' hands, and only in a limited set of scenarios where the expert determines that further harm would be caused, or that a referral to a particular family physician or mental health agency should not be made. Perhaps a different type of referral should be made. Or when a witness cannot be present, we're taking contemporaneous notes, so everything is recorded. Contemporaneous notes, by the way, can be used and have evidentiary weight to demonstrate that a fact did or did not occur. So these changes that are being suggested tonight by the school administration, I think, are in working order. And as for the comment about needing going back to the subcommittee, while the school committee can certainly take that suggestion, as Hannah has pointed out, this has been considered by the subcommittee for some time. This has been considered by the school committee now, I believe, on at least 3 full school committee meetings.
Correct.
And you're required to have this policy by RIDE. There is some play in the joint, so to speak, in terms of local discretion on things. This area that you're discussing is important. That's why it's taking up a lot of time. And I think your policy is a good policy.
Thank you, Sean. With that all being said, I was going to say, have we made the change on the policy as it stands?
Yes.
I will consider a motion to adopt the policy as articulated with the PowerPoint presentation and then what Superintendent D.S. Mitchell added.
So moved.
Second.
We will vote via roll call, Jennifer.
Travis Audi,
Aye.
Hannah Ayotte,
Aye.
Megan Gonzalez.
Aye.
Susan Kinane. Mike Rocha.
no.
Mrs. Pinio, thank you for your diligence on this item. Item 10.3, do we have any school committee member requests for information from administration or legal counsel? There is not. Then I will consider a vote to adjourn. We will vote via roll call.
Travis Audi.
Wait. We need to make a motion. My apologies.
So moved.
Second.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
Travis Audi,
Aye.
Hannah Ayotte,
Aye.
Megan Gonzalez.
Aye.
Susan Mike Rocha.